How's it going, everybody? Today's subject is one that I've talked about before. I've hinted at it a couple times. I've talked about it. I've heard about this story a long time ago. Well, probably when it came out. No, I've heard about it a while back. It's one of the craziest stories ever. And it blends the cartels with the paranormal, which is why this is a great fit for us. But with this episode coming out, this will be the last time I talk about cartels for like a month or two. Because listen, 3 episodes back to back about this, I'm ended up drawing some unwanted attention. So I don't want to do that. After this, no more. We're going to move on, talk about different stuff, and keep it that way. So let's begin. This episode is going to mix true crime and paranormal into one crazy event that takes place on both sides of the border, parts in Texas and in Mexico. Information can be found on Wikipedia, Murderpedia, Discovery TV, Poisoned Passions, Sacrificial Evil. These are the TV shows that have done documentaries on this. Most Evil, Cult Leaders, and Pandora's Box, Unleashing Evil, The Devil's Ranch. And I pulled it also from like 2 other websites that I didn't put on here. That's my fault, but yeah. So let's begin and let's start at the beginning with Adolfo Constanzo, aka El Padrino, or The Godfather. This is a man. What did I do? Hold on. Okay, right here. Good. This is a man that was enigmatic and charming, able to convince others of unspeakable things. Was this a gang, a cartel, or a cult? These are all things you have to ask yourself about this person, too. I would have to say it was a little bit of both, with the cult being at the top. Before we get into what he and his followers did, let's begin with who he was and what started his path. Adolfo Constanzo, born November 1962 to mother Delia Gonzalez, to a Cuban immigrant priestess in the Palo Mayombe region, at the age of 15, moved to Miami, Florida. Eventually having 2 more children, all with different fathers, and eventually marrying, soon his stepfather passed away, resulting in his mother taking the family to Puerto Rico. So I know it's a lot of information starting off. So his mom was a priestess in the Palo Mayombe region of Cuba. They moved at the age of 15. When he was 15, they moved to Miami, Florida. His mom had 2 more kids, so 3 kids altogether, including himself. And then all different dads. Okay, so where was I? So 2 brothers, him, his mom, all different dads, and eventually his mom married his stepdad, and he eventually passed away, resulting in his mother taking the family to Puerto Rico. Adolfo was soon baptized Catholic and served as an altar boy. Adolfo would accompany his mother to Haiti to learn about voodoo, and all this time his mother had remarried, maybe through a voodoo ritual that helped her find a husband. That's a big question mark, because she is a priestess and they're studying voodoo. And this all comes into play because Catholic and voodoo are 2 completely different things that have things in common. So it's a little confusing. So let's keep going, right? Why would I say this? Because the Constanzo family moved back to Florida and another husband soon died in 1972, leaving behind some money. So now they got some money, right? All this happened before he was a teenager. When he became a teenager, he found a Palo Mayombe sorcerer, which is their religion, which is the region that they were in is what practiced this, right? He found a Palo Mayombe sorcerer who took him in as an apprentice. Before we move any further, let's talk a little bit about his religion. So, I know I'm giving y'all so much information. There's so much to decipher here, right? And this is just the beginning of his life. Palo is a religion steeped in mystery and mysticism, combining African, diasporic, Congo, Roman Catholic, and spiritism. See, that's 4 different things, right? That's a lot of different cultures with varying beliefs. Palo is organized into smaller groups known as Munansok, Congo, each led by either a father, Tata, or a mother, Yayin. I'm probably butchering those. Bear with me, right? With main beliefs in a creator of divinity called Nasambi, which is a being that is not involved with human affairs. which meant no need to make no connection with the creator, giving time to focus on the spirits of the departed. So in other words, with this religion, you never focused on the creator, because the creator just made humans and then just did his own thing, right? Or her, whatever the belief is, and did their own thing. They did not have any connection to humans. They just created and dipped out. Which, in other words, the main focus of their religion is spiritualism. So they focused more on the spirits of the departed. This was done through a vessel, like an actual vessel, a cauldron with many things, mainly sticks and human remains. This process keeps the spirit tied to the vessel, the cauldron. It can take days, weeks to mate. Known as an enganga, thought to be alive, and the better it's cared for, the stronger the bond, and better the ritual results would be. So, with this religion, you focus on the spiritualistic side of it, and you make an actual cauldron that binds a spirit to it with human remains and various items, right? Nails. I've seen some that have like nails, sticks, wire, bone. Like I've actually seen them on different TV shows. There was a old show out there that was basically like a pawn shop of the macabre, and they had one. So it's just created, right? And you would think that this is kind of like evil, being a cauldron like that, but there's varying sides to this religion. So, is this religion evil or good? It's both. As with most religions, there's always going to be sects that are not good. These different sects are called Christiana and Judea, Christian and Jewish. Guess which one is good and evil? Since it has influence with the Catholic faith. Since Palo is influenced by the Catholic faith, Judea is the evil one. Thanks to 19th century Catholic ideology, how do you identify which is which? Christianas use holy water crucifixes and the bones that are thought to be of a Christian when making their engangas, while Judea practitioners use the bones of a madman or a criminal. But they have nothing to do with the Jewish faith. It's just called that due to the Catholic beliefs. These two groups often fight, with the Christianas not being allowed to kill. They are usually kept separate for this reason. So, on one part of the island or one part of wherever they're at are going to be Christianas, and on the other side are going to be Judeas. There's going to be like an actual division between these two groups because they are enemies. Because one is good, one is bad. The Christianas are not allowed to kill. So you know what I mean? So let's jump back to the Nganga. How do you strengthen this vessel? By making sacrifices to it, living sacrifices. The belief of this religion is not perfection, but power. Speed, strength, and clever decisiveness are seen as positive traits. The opposite of that is revolt, risk, and change. They do not have the beliefs of sin as Catholics have. It's considered a world-embracing religion. So, let's get back to the Constanzas. So, y'all got a little bit of backstory about this whole religion thing. His mom remarried to a man that dealt with drugs and practiced Palo. So, after the last husband that left him some money, now another husband comes in that is a practitioner of this religion. Both Constanza and his mother were constantly being arrested for vandalism, theft, and shoplifting. Graduating from high school, he went on to prep school to continue his education. This, however, was short-lived. In 1983, he moved to Mexico City, and this is where everything started. This is where it all takes off. He tried the school thing, it didn't work out, right? Starting his cult/cartel, he began to get followers. These people were Martin Rodriguez, Omar Ochoa, and Jorge Montes. Rumors were that he started a sexual relationship with two of these men, even though that was not allowed in the Palo religion. How did he go around this? He declared himself their equivalent of the devil. So his way to be able to get away with things that normally are not allowed within his religion was to make himself the top tier. Now, with the title of butcher this, Kadiem Pembe, he began fortune telling, ritual cleansing, spells, and potions. So that's the name of their devil. I'm not going to pronounce it again because it's a difficult one to pronounce. Kadiem Pembe. He declared himself basically their god. So, and he started fortune telling, cleansings, and in Mexico, especially in Mexico City, cleansings are a big deal. So somebody that can do this for you is going to make you some money. His clientele ranged from politicians to gangs. So he took care of everyone. They paid for his services, and in return, he would sacrifice animals like goats, chickens, zebras, and lion cubs. So they were able to get all sorts of stuff because his clientele weren't just the regular, like me and you. They were actual high ranking officials, politicians, and high ranking gang leaders, which most likely would mean they were cartel members also. So after all these sacrifices, he promised them good luck and good fortune. So believing he was at the top, he had 30 clients paying well, allowing him to purchase a $60,000 condo, a few luxury cars, and 4 federal judicial police. So all the things he bought, he also had 2 cops in his pocket. He had 4 federal cops in his pocket. 2 years later, he began using human remains to strengthen his powers in rituals. They got the bones by grave robbing. With 4 police on his payroll, he was able to meet cartel leaders, which increased his fortune. They liked his flourish and the violence involved with the rituals. The following year, in 1986, he believed he was due a partnership with the cartels, demanding half their profits. So he got federal police in his pocket. They introduced him to the cartel. And from there, he starts working with the cartels. He believes after a little bit, he's like, hey, I've brought y'all good luck. Y'all see my rituals work. Y'all haven't been stopped as often. Y'all are able to get away with more stuff. I believe y'all owe me something. I'm wanting half of your work. Now, the reason he's getting away with a lot of this stuff is because he has federales in his pocket. So they're able to tell him when the operations are, when the stings are, where the roadblocks are. So he's got a way to get around it all, right? So he's making it appear he has more power than what he actually has by convincing them, hey, these rituals work. They turned him down though. So what did he do? He commanded his cult to find, kidnap, torture, and kill members of the Calzadas family to send a message. They found the bodies with missing parts, fingers, toes, brain, and one spine. So it's safe to say he didn't like not getting his way. So they told him no. He took out the competition. Eventually, he found a new member, and this one was a special. This person was special to him. Who was it? It was Sarah Aldrete, who would be known as La Madrina or the Godmother. So now we're going to jump over to a different person. This is their story. This is Sarah Aldrete's story. Like I said, this episode is going to combine 4 different stories together to show everything that went into what happened. Sarah Aldrete wasn't always a murdering high priestess. So she was along with this cult. Before that, she had a life. Born in Matamoros, she eventually was able to go to school in Brownsville, Texas. She had to constantly cross the border to get an education. So a lot of people in Mexico, they actually go to school on the state side. They got to constantly back and forth, right? They're granted a special visa to go to school, maybe get a job, a part-time, whatever, and go back home. And they have to do this every day. They can't stay over here. They go, come back, they go, come back, they go, come back. So she crossed the border to get an education. She was a brilliant student wanting better for her life. Eventually, she was able to gain resident status to attend the University of Texas. So she did well enough in school that she was able to get status to stay in Texas and study at a university. Sometime in spring break, she would be fated to meet the man that would change her future in a chance encounter. I use quotes. This will make sense later, right? In a chance encounter, she meets Adolfo Constanzo. Reports say that she was abducted or she went willingly. So there's conflicting reports. So she was either abducted or she went with him. Now, if it was the latter, then it turns into a case of Munchausen syndrome. Yeah, because if she was abducted and then all this happened, Munchausen. If not, so you got to be the judge on that. He convinces her that they met through fate. To prove it, he tells her her fortune, telling her things that a stranger wouldn't know. Not sure as to what to do, they exchange numbers and part ways. So they have a chance encounter, and he's like, hey, it's fate that we met. I'm a fortune teller. Let me tell you your fortune. He tells her things that nobody else knows about her except for him. So this is all like, she's starting to believe him. She's like, that's weird that you know all this stuff. So he gives her his phone number. They exchange numbers. They're just going to call, and that's it. My dogs are barking. I got no notifications. Okay, my ring's not going off, so it's no one at the door. Probably a cat outside. Hold on a second. Let me check my ring. Wait. Okay, never mind. Okay, good. Constanzo tries to convince her to meet. My God. Okay, so they call each other constantly. They're in communication. Constanzo tries to convince her to meet. She rejects him. Then one day she receives a phone call from her boyfriend telling her that they needed to break up because she was cheating on him with Constanzo. Now, no one's ever seen them together. So they don't like, how did that happen, right? As she wonders how he could have known about him because they only met that one time, right? As if by magic, Constanzo calls and she finally agrees to join him, to go somewhere with him, right? They go to a strange location, walking down a hall to a room. She has the sudden urge in her to run, but her curiosity gets the best of her. So he takes her like this strange area. They go inside, they go down a long hallway, right? And she feels this gut instinct to take off. But curiosity gets the better of her. As she enters the room, she is overcome with the smell that she cannot make out, that being incense and blood. This room is where the rituals happen, the sacrifices, and everything else. She is at first scared, but Constanzo soon convinces her that this is her future as a high priestess. So at this moment, like if someone took me to a strange place and say, "Hey, this is for you. You're a high priest," I'm like, "You must be high. I'm out of here." Within weeks of slowly learning the arts, so she agrees. She's like, she's has enough of a curiosity that she's like, okay, let's see where this goes. So within weeks of slowly learning the arts, she begins a relationship with him. She continues going to school as she learns and trains in the arts of Palo. So she's leading a double life. During the day, she's, a university student, and at night, she's learning how to be a high priestess. In 1988, she finally has learned enough to move on to becoming the priestess that she's meant to be. In a ritual, she is initiated into the cult officially. In the ritual, her blood is added to the nganga with a ritual sacrifice. She starts to believe what is happening to her is real. She is now La Madrina. In 1988, he tells her some news that they are going to create a church and live there. In a small shack located west of Matamoros, he will be the master and she his priestess. So now with the start of the church, they needed more followers. So she introduces Constanzo to Elio Hernandez, a connection she made while growing up in Matamoros, turning his religion into a cartel. So that's a lot, right? And that's just two people's information. Now, the Hernandez brothers, Elio Hernandez, he's part of a cartel, he's part of a gang. So all this is happening, and now we're going to introduce another set of people. These are two more people we're introducing. And this is even before the main thing happens. Now enters the Hernandez brothers. The Hernandez brothers run the biggest drug ring in the area. At their peak, they were said to be moving approximately 1 ton of marijuana a week. During the time that Constanzo started to make bigger moves, and with the disbandment of the Casada family, the Hernandez family was in a disarray. So with everything happening, Constanza making bigger moves, trying to become something, and then, everything that happened to the Casada family, this was the perfect opportunity because the Hernandez family had also suffered a loss. With the decline of drug sales and fighting amongst themselves, and in 1987, the year previous, Saul Hernandez Rivera was shot outside a bar in Matamoros, their longtime leader being shot dead. Once one of the biggest drug dealers stretching from Mexico to Michigan, they had economic power and the men to back it up. But with Saul dead, they were currently struggling to get a foothold back in Matamoros. That's when the Padrino stepped in. Not much is known before the association with the cult. So this is all the information we have on them. Or before they were with the cult, this is everything I could find on them. Their leader was Saul Hernandez, who was shot outside a bar. So with their leader with their leader dead, they needed a leader. They needed someone else to take control of the situation. With his enigmatic ways, Constanza was able to make his way into the family. Using his connections with the Federale police, he convinced them that his magical powers were real and that he has the answer for them. He has the answer that they were looking for, right? So now he's there. He's like, hey, y'all need help. I need, this could be beneficial for us. I help you, you help me. So, but they don't know that he has a couple federal police in his pocket. So using his connection with the federal police, he, made them believe that his powers were real and that he was what they were looking for. I know I just repeated myself, but that he had to convince them. With the brothers feeling invincible, they started making moves craving more power. So they believed it. They bought into the whole, okay, this guy's legit. We haven't been stopped as much. We're able to make more moves. We're making money again. We're getting back into how we were when Saul was here. So the only way to get the power they were seeking was to increase the sacrifices. So this was all a setup to what happened and how this cult slash religion slash cult religion, same thing, how this cartel gang slash cult religion was discovered. Now that the stage is set and all the players were introduced, we can really begin to piece it all together. So let's recap and continue the story. Constanzo seduces Sarah in an effort to get closer to the Hernandez brothers that were reeling from the loss of their leader, Saul Hernandez. So he met Sarah Aldrete on purpose. I don't think she knew this because she knew the Hernandez brothers when she lived in Matamoros. Reeling from the loss of their leader, Saul Hernandez, now with all the pieces in place, right? So this guy's making everything work. Everything's falling into place the way he planned it. Constanzo had manipulated the whole thing. Their downfall was one of two things. So this is what led to them being caught. One was the main rule most, if not all, cartels tend to abide by: do not touch Americans because it brings the US government to their doors. So one of an unwritten rule of gangs and cartels in Mexico is don't touch the Americans. You can, scare them, extort them for money, whatever, right? But you don't kill them because that's going to lead US government to come over because there's already that issue of drugs and everything. And they're just looking for a reason to overreach and stop. And that's what happens. A lot of times something happens and then out of nowhere, you get all these messages and things. Like if you're traveling to Mexico, stay on the touristy areas, stay on the properties, stay at the hotel. That's why there are all these big areas that you're allowed to go to. And then they always tell you don't go with the locals because that's where the trouble happens. And secondly, if the police are not on the payroll or there's a checkpoint that you didn't know about, hide or turn around. Yeah, so if you run into cops that are not part of your organization, or you find a checkpoint that's a surprise, you hide, you run and hide, you take off. It's going to lead into a chase, but you don't continue on because now you're going to get caught. So you do whatever you can to get away. So as the sacrifices got bigger, the cult slash cartel group was on the precipice of one of their biggest runs. So Constanzo orders the Hernandez brothers to bring him an American college student, reasoning that they had to be smarter. So the whole reasoning, he's like, hey, bring me an American college student. We need to be smarter about this with their powers. As they could do these sacrifices, they're gaining the powers of the people and the animals that they're sacrificing. So you sacrifice somebody that's smart, you're going to be smarter. That was the reasoning behind it. The Nganga needed to be smarter to give them better powers. The brothers set out onto the town to find the perfect victim. And now we're going to introduce another person. And now, in everything that I've been able to find, the stories only ever tell the story about Constanzo and Kilroy. And this is the story of Mark Kilroy. So we're introducing him, right? So we've set the stage. You got Aldrete, Sarah, and the Hernandez brothers, and now Mark Kilroy. I know I held up 5 fingers. There's more Hernandez brothers, but there's only 2 that are the main ones in the story. So, the unfortunate soul was Mark Kilroy. In the early hours of March 11th, 1989, 3 students left the bar and decided to end their night of partying. Mark, Bill, and Bradley had spent the night across the border like most college students. Why cross the border? Legal drinking age was 18, a perfect place for a young college guy celebrating spring break. Now, legal drinking age in Mexico is 18, right? So if you're partying in the States, you can't drink. But you cross that border, you can go drink. Little did they know that this was going to be the last night they would party together. As they made their way back to their car to go home, Mark had let his friends know that he needed to use the bathroom. About 200 feet from the border, he stopped in an overgrown park to relieve himself. His friends kept going, believing that Mark would catch up. So he's like, hey, y'all keep going. I got to use the restroom. They're like, cool, whatever, dude. And they take off. And he's still there, right? he's using the restroom. As far as they know, he stops using the restroom. So they left after about 2 hours. They started to get worried because this isn't like them. They went back across the border to Matamoros to search for their friend and nothing. They could not find him. So they give up on the search for the night and they go back home, right? So now they got to wait till the next day. The next day comes, they visit the U.S. consulate to get them involved. And the consulate has had this happen many times. Too many people missing cases. It's all the same thing to them. They treat it like it's nothing because they've had a lot of missing cases, and it just turns out to be drunk college kid passes out, and in a day or two later, they come back home and they're like, "Oh, okay, cool, we're back." So that was like a wasted effort at that point. Turn down my notifications. So that's a wasted effort on their part because they're like, we always find them. They come to us. They go to the hospital. We're notified, and we send them home, right? So they're just like, look, this happens all the time. Don't worry about it. I'm just being a drunk college person passing out and coming to the next day and making their way back. This was not the case though, because they knew him. They're like, no, this isn't who Mark is. But they dismissed him. So the guys did the next best thing. They go and get the parents involved. With Kilroy's parents in tow, they went to the Cameron County Sheriff's Office in Brownsville, Texas. There, Lieutenant took their statements, and to him, it sounded like Kilroy had gone missing in Mexico, which was outside his jurisdiction. So the lieutenant went down to Matamoros to get assistance with the case. The Matamoros police had claimed that Kilroy had gone missing on the state side, and they could not help. So now they're just like, yeah, no, we can't do anything. And he's like, well, he's over there. He's like, no, they're not. So they're getting the runaround. And it's not the American side's fault and it's not the Mexican side's fault. It's just how they dealt with things. They're like, okay, cool. It sounds to me like he's an American missing. He probably made it back and just got passed out somewhere, right? And the American side's like, no, he was drinking on y'all side and that's the last place we saw them. So, they don't know what to do. So he had to ask for help higher up the chain of command, the Federale police, especially the drug enforcement arm of the force. With the help of the Comandante Juan Benitez Ayala, they set about canvassing the area with over 200,000 flyers in both Spanish and English with a reward of $15,000. So now with the large reward, the Federales and the police assisting in this missing case on both sides, they got the Federales in Mexico, they got the police on the States, they got a large reward. This all brings attention because it's a big deal at this point, right? And it brings the attention of one of my favorite TV shows that I used to watch back in the day, America's Most Wanted, which aired March 26th, 1989, is when that episode came out. So 15 days had passed and they could not find him. All leads came up with nothing. After 3 weeks, all would be revealed in the worst way possible. So let's get back to the Constanzo. So now we got all this set up, right? So we got the Constanzo and his group over there. They're making big power moves with drugs and money, and now they're looking for an American college student. And now Mark Kilroy ends up missing. So start piecing it together, right? So back to Constanzo's group. With the Hernandez brothers believing themselves to be unstoppable, one of the brothers had come across a roadblock set up by the Comandante Ayala near Matamoros. This brother was Elio Hernandez. He was under the impression that his powers that were granted to him from Constanzo himself, that he was invincible, that he just couldn't be stopped, and also that he was actually invisible too. So he just sped through the blockade and continued on his way back to El Rancho Santa Elena, which is the name of the ranch, which was south of Matamoros. When Elio got out of the car, he was surprised that they had followed him and arrested him. So he was shocked. He was like, wait a minute, y'all caught me. What's going on? This shouldn't have happened. Y'all can't touch me. But whatever, I guess y'all caught me. So he was like, whatever. He was shocked. He was like, what? Now the Federale police were at the ranch. They had found pounds of marijuana in the car and the truck. Everywhere. They just had it around because that was part of their operation. So they knew they stumbled onto something big. Little did they know how big it actually was. Located on this ranch was a small shed that had the smell of rotten flesh emanating from it. Peering inside, they spotted a cauldron, the enganga, surrounded by candles. So we're in Mexico, and they came across this. They believed it was brujeria, which meant they're not going near it because Mexico's a religious and a superstitious country. So they're not going to touch it. They're like, that's bad voodoo. That's bad, not voodoo. That's bad juju. They're like, we're not touching this. We got enough to get other stuff. We're not going into the to the brujeria. They're just like, hey, we got other stuff to deal with. So they weren't going to go near it just yet. So they arrested Elio, Serafin, and a few others, and the caretaker that was there. They took the caretaker because he was there. They're like, okay, everyone's involved. Wait, you're taking care of the grounds. You know what's going on. You're coming with us. Elio, Serafin, y'all are coming with us, and they grabbed whoever they could see, right? So the main concern at the moment was the drug bust. So with a handful of people in custody, they made their way back to the station to begin the interrogation. Interrogation's underway. Nobody was going to talk except for two people. So everyone keeps their mouth shut because they're with the cops. You shouldn't talk to them if you're dealing with this kind of situation. If you are a cartel, drug leader, drug lord, gang member, you don't talk to the cops, right? No one else is talking to them because they know they're like, yeah, we don't want this is gonna affect us in the long run. So, but two people did talk: the caretaker and Serafin. He was ready to talk, believing that the powers he had would make him untouchable. So he's high on himself. He's like, look, I'll tell you whatever you want. Y'all can't stop us. So his arrogance was part of their undoing. The caretaker was trying to prove his innocence. So one guy's there trying to like, hey, I had nothing to do with this. The other guy's like, y'all can't stop us. So as the caretaker was trying to prove his innocence, and he was trying to convince him that he's just a caretaker. He has nothing to do with what's going on at the ranch. And while he was being interrogated, he spotted one of Kilroy's missing persons poster. And he told Ayala that he had spotted him 3 weeks ago in the back of a Suburban. Serafin, being arrogant, admitted that he and his brother had kidnapped him and brought Kilroy to the ranch on behalf of the padrino, Constanzo. He was ordered to get an American college student that was studying to be a doctor, so someone smart. Ayala asked why if there was never a ransom call for money or any other demands. He's like, so why'd y'all take him if y'all didn't make a ransom call, y'all didn't ask for money, y'all didn't ask for anything, y'all just took him. Why? Serafin calmly said he was chosen for a human sacrifice for El Padrino. With this knowledge, Ayala asked him, take me to the body. Take me to where y'all buried him if y'all sacrificed him. Serafin said, which one? Like, what body? He's like, take me to the body. Serafin's like, which one? Pick a body. I'll take you over there. And Ayala, believing this to be some kind of cruel joke, reiterated, take him to Kilroy's body. He's like, oh, fine. You want to be funny? I'm going to be specific. Take me to Kilroy. To Mark Kilroy, the college kid y'all killed. So Serafin took him directly to the spot where he was buried. The location had been marked with a hanger sticking out of the ground. El Padrino wanted to make a necklace out of his spine as part of the ritual. As part of a different ritual, actually. With the body uncovered, the truth was brought to light of his death. And it was likely a very horrific and painful ordeal that no one should have ever gone through. With the top of his skull removed, they took out his brains, they removed his legs, they exposed his spine and threaded a wire through it. So they tortured his body. That's after death. Imagine what they did to him before, because also part of this ritual is the pain and suffering makes the Nganga powerful. On the Judea side, that pain and suffering feeds it. The fear feeds it, and then the human sacrifice gives it power. So it's like an appetizer for it, basically. So how this happened was described by Serafin, which showed no remorse. So he's like, hey, I'll tell you exactly what happened, right? He told investigators that he and his brother had gone out to the bar, wading through the thousands of American tourists. They're just people everywhere. They're looking for the perfect person. So looking for a victim that fit El Padrino's criteria, that's when they found Kilroy. They followed him to the park where he had stopped to go to the bathroom. So he actually had to go to the bathroom. They stopped to go. Where they flashed fake badges and told him he was under arrest for public drunkenness. So they pretended to be cops. They proceeded to throw him in the back of their van and drove a few blocks to wait for another car driven by other members of the family. While they were waiting for the other car, Kilroy had managed to escape. He ran and almost got away when one of them shouted, "Freeze," in English. So being a good college kid, this guy he wasn't a bad guy. That's why his friends immediately knew something was wrong, because it was out of the ordinary for him to do something like that. Disappeared, to be that drunk and be irresponsible. He was a very responsible young man. So someone that responsible and that, flying straight and narrow down the path, not going too far crazy. If a cop tells you to freeze, you stop. And that's what he did. He stopped. Out of instinct, he stopped, and the Hernandez brothers caught him, tied him up, and placed duct tape over his eyes and mouth. So they got him. Now they're making sure he can't get away. The next vehicle arrived, which was the Suburban that the caretaker had mentioned. After a few hours later in the afternoon, so they kept him in the car out from morning to the afternoon, right? So it's late at night, or it's early in the morning when they catch him, and now it's later in the afternoon. So it's been a while, right? He was dragged into the little shed where the Nganga was placed. And that's when the true nightmare began. The torture began, believing that his anguish and pain would feed the spirits with spirits. I wrote that wrong. Would feed the spirit. To finish the ritual, Constanza cut the top of Kilroy's skull to feed the Nganga his brains, to make him and the spirits smarter. Ayala had Hernandez start working on digging up graves with the realization of how many there were. So, after all this, Ayala's like, okay, you said bodies. I'm starting to believe you now. Start digging up more. So as they're going around, they're like, this is more than we anticipated, right? So they're like, this is a lot. This is too much. So Ayala commandeered a backhoe from a neighboring ranch. In total, they had exhumed 14 plus people. Every single one of them showed evidence of torture, decapitation, burning, castration, and at least one had his heart removed. Finally, the police turned their attention to the shed. Finally opening the shed, they found what was left of the human sacrifices, a machete caked in blood and tissue, either human or animal. So they found flesh. They couldn't identify what it was. And there was a 55-gallon drum where the flesh had been boiled off the bone. Nganga still had a stew of rotten flesh, both human and animal, and Kilroy's brain still in it. With Serafin still believing they were untouchable, he told the police where El Padrino, La Madrina, their right-hand man were. He was like, yeah, I'll tell you exactly where they're at. You're not going to touch them. You're not going to catch them. You're not going to be able to take them in. I'll tell you exactly where they're going and who they're meeting. I'll tell you everything. He did. He was that arrogant that he was like, yeah, sure. I'll tell you what you want to know. So they traveled to McAllen, Texas, and boarded a flight to Mexico City using fake identities. The police had gone to Mexico City to search Constanzo's different homes that he had only discovered that he was in the wind. But what they did find were more bodies, bringing the total up to 23 known victims. Constanzo's smart. He didn't go to one of his homes. He's like, nah, I can't. It's going to be too hot. They know my homes, right? So he didn't go there. But what they did find when the police did show up were more bodies. So the police enlisted the help of a professor that specialized in Santeria and Palo Mayombe. He advised them to burn the shack down and, most importantly, destroy the Nganga to bring him out of hiding. So destroy what he finds sacred. And he's like, destroy this, destroy his altar, destroy his Nganga, and he's going to come out of hiding. So the police brought a camera crew to the ranch and proceeded to do just that. And as predicted, Constanzo, who was in a high-rise apartment hiding out with Aldrete and a couple of their followers, saw this. He was watching this on TV. He saw this. He proceeded to unravel. He started losing his mind. With his powers being disturbed, he began to become paranoid. In a state of panic, he began burning his money and throwing wads of cash and coins out of his window, creating a disturbance. So he's losing his mind. He's like, I got to do something. So he's burning his physical possessions now, believing that that's going to help bring some of his power back. This disturbance brought the attention of local police who were just investigating what was happening. So all this noise and, whatever was going on, burning money into the streets and people like, hey, it's raining money, created enough attention that they were like, the police got him. They're like, wait a minute, what's going on? So they were just investigating what was happening. But with him becoming more unhinged, decided that they were there for him. So he sees the police. He's like, crap, they're here for me. They found me. I don't know how, but they found me. So what does he do? He starts shooting at them. They weren't there for him. They were there just to be like, to keep the peace with everything else. They're trying to figure out what's going on. So he probably could have talked his way out of it. He's like, oh, there was a small. I don't know. He could have been like, oh, there was a small fire, and I was, my money caught on fire, so I threw it out the window. Whatever. He made up whatever and probably convinced them about it, right? But no, he decided to shoot at them, and cops are going to shoot back. They had an exchange that lasted about 45 minutes, with one officer being wounded. Constanzo, seeing no way out, decided that his followers needed to make the ultimate sacrifice and kill him to show his loyalty. So he's like, look, he knows he's caught. So he's like, to prove that you're loyal to me and for you to gain power, you're going to have to kill me. And they're like, okay, you have powers. Obviously, nothing's going to happen to you. So they thought it was a test. So his followers killed him, shot him in the head a few times. He died. Once the police entered, they found Constanzo dead along with one of his followers, and Aldrete hiding with other followers, who eventually surrendered to the police, bringing an end to everything that had happened. Elio Hernandez, Serafin Hernandez, and Sarah Aldrete were convicted of multiple murders and given the maximum sentence allowed in Mexico, which is only 60 years. Okay, so here's the good and the bad of all this, is that the Kilroys had closure for their son, with the help of 2 different police agencies and media helping them out. While on the other hand, out of the 23 known victims, only 9 of his victims were able to be identified. Police still believe there may be more victims that have not been discovered, or their bodies chopped up into medallions and other items and given to his various clientele to bring them luck or whatever they wished upon with the rituals Constanzo performed. So the good thing is, in total, 10 families had closure, which isn't that good because they lost somebody, but at least now they have peace. They know unfortunately, they know the sacrifice, the literal sacrifice that was involved, the torture and everything, but they know that that family member isn't just missing and constantly being tortured or being whatever, right? Whatever their imagination is giving them, they know that, okay, they're in peace now. And whatever religion they're in, they're like, they moved on to a better place. Yeah, and that's about it. That brings this wild ride of a story to an end. You never know what people believe in and what the drive for power would drive them to do. So this is a lot, right? I had a lot of research to do on this one. I did a lot. And hopefully I did justice to it. This was a fan submission. So I do listen to y'all. So whatever y'all recommend, I will gladly look up. I will find out, and I'll research as much as I can for y'all, because this podcast isn't just me rambling on for 45 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour about, paranormal, true crime, things like that. This is me telling y'all the stories of these people, especially if it's something like this. I'm telling y'all what happened to them and everything on both sides of the story. I'll tell y'all both sides of the story, from the good and the bad, from the cult leaders and everything they went through in life that led them down this path. Constanzo was being groomed from a young age to be a priest in the Palo religion by his mother, because she started him off as Catholic because it has Catholic roots. And then she took him to Haiti to learn some voodoo, which is spiritualism. And then eventually it all culminated into him becoming this leader, this high priest, or their god, essentially. So all this, he started on a bad path. And then the Hernandez brothers, they were part of a gang. They were part of a family gang, a family cartel, a family that was into this situation. They were drug dealers. And then Sarah Aldrete, she was just a college kid who ended up meeting the wrong person. So they all have a story to tell, and Mark Kilroy is the saddest because he was just out with his friends on a good night, celebrating spring break, having fun, but little did he know that that was his last night, drinking with the boys, So, like always, stay spooky, be careful, and again, if you have any suggestions, put it in the comments, and I'll figure it out. Till next time, guys.